In the cold of the abbey, my fingers traced letters that my heart couldn't feel. I copied tales of saints and martyrs, but my soul yearned for those of dragons and knights. The ink more a chain than a tool. I felt a profound sense of emptiness, a yearning for stories that transcended the rigid piety of our texts. The monotony was a heavy cloak, suffocating the last embers of my imagination. My days were a silent, rhythmic procession of strokes and lines, each one pulling me further from the world of wonder I craved. Then a fateful accident, a dropped inkwell, a ruined parchment, led me to a forgotten corner of the library. It was there, amidst the dust and decay of centuries, that I found it, a crumbling ancient manuscript known as the Phoenix Codex. Its pages, unlike any I had ever touched, were made of a fine silky vellum, and its covers were carved from ancient olive wood, adorned with the image of a bird engulfed in flames. The Codex was a world unto itself. Its script was archaic, its illustrations strange and captivating. As I began to transcribe it, the words on the page didn't just appear, they seemed to pulse with a hidden light. My hands, once clumsy and tired, moved with a newfound purpose. The cold, sterile air of the scriptorium no longer felt oppressive. Instead, it was filled with the promise of secrets. The Mother Superior Hildegard, a woman of profound wisdom and stern resolve, noticed the change in me. She didn't scold me for my fascination. Instead, she spoke of the magic of literature, not as a form of sorcery, but as the power of stories to transform the world. She warned me that such power, like fire, could either light the way or consume everything in its path. Her words were a solemn prophecy, and I, a simple novice, was about to become its unwitting subject. My life changed completely with the arrival of a mysterious scribe, Anselm. He wasn't like the other monks. His clothes were simple, his demeanor worldly, and his eyes held a knowing glint. He showed an unusual interest in my work, asking questions that went beyond the mere reproduction of text. He taught me to read between the lines, to see the hidden symbols within the calligraphy of the phoenix's wing, a key, a map, a path. He revealed that a true scribe doesn't just copy the letter, he copies the soul of the story. His arrival was no mere coincidence. He was a guide, a key to a world that the Codex had just begun to unlock. The Phoenix Codex was not a book to be copied, it was a challenge. An invitation to a world that wasn't on the pages but between them. And for the first time the words, rather than being a burden, began to glow. The Codex was not a book, it was a map. Its words were riddles, its illustrations a guide. They led me not to a treasure of gold, but to one of knowledge. Every verse, every drawing was an echo of a past that called to me. The strongest echo was that of a legendary knight, Sir Galvain, and his quest for a mythical object, the Mirror of Souls. I thought I was following his story, but I soon realized his epic was just the surface, a deliberate distraction from a much deeper truth. I plunged into the Codex, losing myself in its enigmatic structure. The chapters wove together with poems and maps merged with prayers. With Anselm's guidance, I learned to navigate this web of knowledge. He showed me how illustrations and verses corresponded, how the prayers pointed to specific places within the abbey. I discovered that each story was a link in a chain leading to something far greater. My obsession didn't go unnoticed. The Mother Superior Hildegard, with her ancient wisdom, warned me about the dangers of excessive curiosity. Truth, she said, is a treasure, but it is also a heavy burden. I felt the weight of her words, but the allure of the Codex was too strong to resist. My research led me to the first clue, the tears of the well and the shadow of the bell tower. I raced to the abbey's courtyard, watching as the midday sun cast the bell tower's shadow directly onto an old well. Inside a hidden compartment in the well, I found a small wooden chest containing a detailed map of the abbey, marked with unusual symbols. It was no ordinary map, it was an overlay, a guide to a world hidden within the one I knew. The puzzle pieces were falling into place and I felt a profound connection to the past. But the greatest revelation came from an old, frail monk, Father Benedict, who had always watched me from afar. He revealed that the Codex was a family legacy, passed down through generations. My ancestors, before the abbey was a place of faith, were the guardians of this knowledge. My destiny wasn't one I had found, it was one I had inherited. Anselm showed me how to use an oil lamp to reveal invisible ink on the parchment. With the heat and light, a new intricate map appeared, overlaying the first one. The path to the Mirror of Souls became clearer, revealing itself as not just a physical journey, but a guide to the outside world, a manual for a perilous voyage. Hildegard, watching the process, looked on with a mix of pride and apprehension. She knew the knowledge was a powerful force but also a dangerous one. Knowledge, Alaric, she said, is like fire. It can light a path, but if not handled with care, it can burn everything around you. I felt a new sense of purpose, a responsibility that went beyond the simple act of copying. My life had a new meaning, a dangerous one, and the Codex, a simple book, was its undeniable source. The calm of the abbey shattered with the arrival of the Inquisition. Their black-clad figures, led by the Inquisitor Torquemada, cast a long shadow over our hallowed halls. Torquemada was a man of cold, unyielding authority, his face a mask of grim determination. He was known for his ruthlessness, his disdain for any knowledge that strayed from the one true doctrine. The moment he set foot in the abbey, I knew he was a threat. He came not in search of salvation but of heresy, and he saw the forbidden in every corner. His gaze was a chilling blade, cutting through the peace we had so long enjoyed. He had heard rumors of our vast library, and his suspicions immediately fell upon the Phoenix Codex. A terrified monk, Father Gabriel, out of fear, confessed that a young novice was working with an ancient and strange book. Torquemada's icy gaze landed on me. Anselm, with his remarkable composure, stepped forward, claiming I was just an apprentice and the book a mere relic. But Torquemada wasn't fooled. His eyes, like two chips of ice, seemed to see right through my flimsy lie. "Ignorance often hides heresy, scribe," he said, his voice a low, dangerous growl. "But knowledge is the most subtle of poisons." I felt his words like a physical blow. I knew he wasn't just searching for a book. He was hunting the knowledge it contained, a knowledge that threatened his very foundation of power. If he found me, my fate would be sealed, consumed by the flames of his zealous fire. With a heart pounding in my chest, I rushed to the scriptorium, followed closely by the Mother Superior Hildegard. She too knew the danger. She told me we couldn't confront Torquemada, not yet. Together, with Anselm's help, we hid the Codex in a secret hollow behind an altar, a space concealed by dusty, old tapestries. The Codex shimmered for a moment as if reluctant to be hidden, as if it longed to be read. Hildegard warned me, "Do not risk yourself, Alaric. Knowledge can be a weapon but also a heavy burden." She was right. My mission had become bigger than myself. It was about protecting a legacy. The Inquisitor, however, was not easily deterred. He interrogated Hildegard in her office, a tense battle of wills. She, with her unwavering calm, deflected his questions, speaking of her faith and the abbey's dedication to God's word. Torquemada, though suspicious, had no proof. She had bought us time, but I knew it was a temporary victory. The abbey, once my tranquil home, had become a battlefield and the pen my only weapon. To throw Torquemada off our trail, Anselm and I ventured into the labyrinth of parchments, a section of the library rarely visited. We soon discovered that the labyrinth was a riddle in itself, a reflection of the Codex's map. The dusty, wooden shelves extended in a seemingly random pattern, but then a passageway would close and another would open. Anselm, with an enigmatic smile, told me that the labyrinth wasn't for the path, but for my mind. The shelves turn, the corridors close, but the words, if you understand them, will guide you. I had to use my knowledge of medieval literature to navigate this maze of wisdom, solving riddles based on troubadour poems and crusader chronicles. A corridor would only open if I recited a specific troubadour's poem. A shelf would move if I answered an enigma from a crusader's chronicle. A riddle from Dante about paradise led me to a section filled with books on astronomy. I realized that my mundane work as a copyist had prepared me for this moment. Every word I had traced, every letter I had painstakingly copied, was a tool for my survival. Torquemada, unable to enter the labyrinth, grew impatient. When he heard rumors of moving shelves, he flew into a rage. I understood then that my knowledge wasn't just a passion, it was a means of survival. My mind sharpened, my senses heightened. I was no longer a simple novice, I was a guardian, a warrior of the mind. Finally, guided by the last riddle, I found a secret passage behind a shelf of history books. It led to a hidden room. The room was empty, but on a marble pedestal, there was a space shaped perfectly to hold the Codex. I placed the book on the pedestal, and the walls of the room came to life with drawings and symbols. The map became three-dimensional, revealing a path that extended far beyond the abbey walls. The true Mirror of Souls wasn't just a map, it was a guide to the outside world, a manual for a perilous journey. "You have done it, boy," Anselm said with a look of admiration. "You haven't just solved the riddle. You have become it." Meanwhile, Torquemada was closing in. The Mother Superior Hildegard tried to buy more time, but the frightened monks were revealing more secrets. He ordered his men to search every inch of the abbey. Hildegard warned him that knowledge was not something that could be controlled. The Inquisition, with its fanaticism, was fighting an enemy it couldn't see or understand. Torquemada, however, was convinced that heresy was something that could be burned away. He told her, "Faith combats ignorance and fire combats heresy." The clock was ticking. I, who once felt trapped in the abbey, now realized that my true freedom lay in escaping it. With the Codex in hand, I had to find my way out, guided by the magic of literature. As Anselm and I continued our study of the Codex, a new discovery astounded me. I found a lock of hair tucked away in a hidden page. It was a rich chestnut color, and next to it was a drawing of a woman who looked strikingly like the Mother Superior Hildegard in her youth. The drawing was so delicate, so full of grace and determination, that it captivated me. Anselm, with a knowing smile, revealed that the Codex was not written by a man, but by a woman. It was not the epic of Sir Galvain, but the personal chronicle of Lady Isolda, the true author. The Codex was her journal, her map, her legacy. My mind, which had conjured a knight as the protagonist, was in awe. The Mother Superior, upon seeing the drawing, her eyes welled up with tears. "Isolda," she whispered. She was a friend, a guardian. Her mission was to protect knowledge, and her weapon was the pen. I read a poem by Isolda, a beautiful verse that spoke of resilience and the strength of the feminine spirit. The poem, which at first seemed like a simple ode to nature, revealed itself as a song of wisdom and perseverance. Isolda's words were not merely beautiful, they were powerful. She described the mirror of souls not as an object, but as a book that revealed the true interior of a person. The revelation moved me deeply. I felt a profound connection to Isolda, a woman who had defied the conventions of her time, who used her writing to protect the truth. Anselm explained that Lady Isolda was a historical figure, a poet and a mystic, who had been pursued by the Inquisition but was never caught. She had used literature to escape her pursuers, writing her life as a legend so that only those who knew how to read the truth could find her. The Phoenix Codex was the last chapter of her life, her final masterpiece. The Phoenix, in fact, was herself rising from the ashes of her own story. That night I dreamt of Isolda. I saw her writing by candlelight, her face filled with determination. I saw her fleeing, the Codex held tightly in her arms. I saw her smiling even in the face of danger. The dream gave me a new perspective. I wasn't just protecting a book, I was protecting the legacy of a woman who dared to dream, to write, and to live for the truth. The magic of literature was not a game, it was an act of faith. And faith was the only thing that could stand against the Inquisition. I understood then that my path was not just that of a scribe, but of a guardian of history. A history that was not written with a sword, but with a pen. And my destiny was tied, not to the abbey, but to the pen of the lady of the manuscript. Evil, I've learned, is not always born. Sometimes it is forged. And Torquemada's was not born of fanaticism, it was born of pain. While searching for a new hiding place, Anselm and I stumbled upon a secret basement in the abbey, a space the Inquisitor had somehow missed. There, among the rubble, we found a brittle, old diary. It belonged to a young man named Tomas. I began to read, and the pages unfolded a tragic tale. It was the story of a young monk, his family, and his profound love for books. The diary described how his family, guardians of the Mirror of Souls, was attacked by a group of zealots who sought to steal the sacred book. The young monk, who barely escaped with his life, swore a terrible oath of vengeance. The last entry was a chilling promise to purge the land of heresy. The name of that young monk was Torquemada. My heart sank. The Inquisitor was not just a fanatic. He was a man consumed by grief and a deep-seated desire for revenge. The diary detailed the tragedy. The fanatics, who believed the Mirror of Souls was a tool of the devil, attacked his family's home. His parents, along with his younger sister, sacrificed themselves to protect the book. The young Torquemada, who hid in a cellar, was the sole survivor. He swore he would find the book and protect it, not for the good of all, but for his own glory. The pain and fear consumed him, and his quest for truth became a blind and cruel persecution. I realized that Torquemada's hatred was not for faith, but for a betrayal he believed had happened. His actions weren't that of a monster, but of a man consumed by his own pain. The Mother Superior, Hildegard, upon seeing the diary, was deeply saddened. She told me the full story. She was a close friend of Torquemada's mother when they were young. She had watched as the young Torquemada became obsessed with the past, turning away from the path of faith and towards one of vengeance. She had tried to warn him, but he wouldn't listen. His persecution was not for the sake of God, it was a personal vendetta. Her own silence had protected the abbey's secret, but it had also contributed to Torquemada's suffering. That night I had a nightmare. I saw Torquemada in his study, tormented by the shadows of his past, his family's faces crying out for justice. I saw the mirror of souls reflecting his own pain. I woke up in a cold sweat. I no longer felt hatred for Torquemada but pity. I knew the Inquisitor was not my enemy but a lost soul. My mission was not just to protect the Codex but, in some way, to save him. The true adversary was fanaticism, a lack of compassion and revenge. And the only weapon against them was the truth. The situation became unbearable. Torquemada, his patience at an end, gathered all the monks in the abbey courtyard. He gave us an ultimatum: hand over the Phoenix Codex or he would burn the abbey, along with every book and manuscript within its walls. The monks, terrified, looked to the Mother Superior Hildegard, who stood firm. Her voice, calm and steady, told Torquemada that the truth could not be burned, that ideas like words were eternal. The tension was palpable. The men's torches blazed in the twilight, threatening to consume all that we held dear. Anselm and I watched from our hiding place, our hearts pounding. If Hildegard revealed the Codex's location, we would be captured. If she didn't, the abbey would be destroyed. Hildegard, with a look of profound wisdom, gave me a silent signal. Her message was clear: flee. She was sacrificing herself to give us time. She remained, refusing to give Torquemada the Codex. Enraged, he ordered his men to search every inch of the abbey, but her unyielding calm had bought us the precious moments we needed. I felt the weight of her sacrifice on my shoulders. I was not just protecting the Codex, I was protecting the legacy of my teacher. Hildegard's firm voice echoed in my ears: the truth cannot be burned. And literature, Inquisitor, is a fire no one can extinguish. Anselm and I packed in secret, taking only the Codex and a few supplies. The Codex glowed in the darkness as we made our way to a hidden underground passage Hildegard had shown us. The air in the tunnel was damp and cold. For a moment, I paused and looked back at the abbey, a dark silhouette against the flickering torchlight of the Inquisitors. I felt a mix of sorrow and hope. I was leaving the only life I had ever known, embracing a destiny as the new guardian of the magic of medieval literature. The abbey was no longer a home, it was a memory. My journey had just begun. I took a deep breath, clutching the Codex tightly. My new home was the open road, my mission was to protect the truth, and my weapon was the pen. Anselm, Hildegard, and I found refuge in a bustling medieval market, a vibrant, chaotic place teeming with minstrels, troubadours, and wandering storytellers. The air was thick with the scent of spices and baked bread, the sounds of music and laughter echoing through the narrow streets. It was a world entirely different from the sterile quiet of the abbey. I felt overwhelmed, but Anselm reminded me that literature wasn't confined to manuscripts. It lived in the stories people told, the songs they sang, and the puppet shows they watched. Books, my boy, he said, are just a medium. True literature lives in the hearts of the people. To earn our keep, Anselm and I set up a small puppet theater, blending the stories from the Codex with the market's oral traditions, never revealing their true origins. Our tales of knights and ladies enchanted the crowds, and our simple act of storytelling became a way to hide in plain sight. An old, blind troubadour, Lazarus, approached us. With his keen ears, he recognized that our stories were not mere tales. He asked me to tell him one, and as I did, he smiled. Lazarus revealed an ancient song that resonated with the Codex's poems. He told me that the guardians of literature were not just scribes, but also storytellers. He taught me that literature wasn't just to be seen, it was to be felt and heard. To live on, knowledge had to become part of life. Our newfound sense of security was short-lived. A man in plain clothes, a spy for Torquemada, was watching us. He recognized one of the illustrations I had sketched on a piece of parchment. He approached Hildegard, who was disguised as an old herbalist, and asked her about the origin of our stories. She, with her usual calm, deflected his questions, but we knew we had been discovered. The abbey had been just the first obstacle. Now, our home was the world and persecution our constant companion. Hildegard, with her ancestral wisdom, taught me the art of discretion. She told me to blend in, to make our stories a reflection of the world, not a revelation. She taught me to weave the Codex's legends into the common folklore, so that people wouldn't notice their true source. Knowledge, Alaric, she said, is like a river. If you let it flow, it will reach everyone. If you try to contain it, you will only drown. I realized then that my mission was not to hoard knowledge but to spread it. And so, we continued our journey, guided by the magic of literature. Lazarus, the blind troubadour, told me that our stories were the words of his people. He revealed the existence of a secret place, a refuge for those who had escaped the Inquisition, a sanctuary of forbidden books. He called it the Heretic's Library. He gave us a series of riddles and an oral map, a song we had to memorize. The map was not a physical one. It was a melody that would guide us through the city's catacombs, a place where books were the most valuable treasures. Following Lazarus's instructions, Anselm, Hildegard, and I entered the catacombs, a labyrinth of dark, damp tunnels. Our only light came from the flickering torches we carried. I began to hum the song Lazarus had taught me, and I noticed that the melody changed when we approached a secret passage. The music not only guided me but protected me too. I felt like an explorer, not of a place but of history. At the end of our journey, we found a large room filled with books, manuscripts, and scrolls. It was the Heretic's Library. It wasn't a place of order like the Abbey, but a chaotic, vibrant sanctuary, filled with people reading, writing, and debating. I felt at home. I met other guardians of literature, each with their own story of persecution. I learned that the Phoenix Codex was one of the keys to universal knowledge, and that there were other books like it, each with a unique power. The community welcomed us, and for the first time in a long time we felt safe. An old librarian showed us a book. It was a copy, but the copy was perfect. It was the Mirror of Souls. He explained that the true mirror was not a book, but a symbol. A symbol that, if understood, allowed one to read the souls of others. The power of the mirror wasn't to change people, but to understand them. I realized that the true power of literature wasn't to control, but to comprehend. And my mission wasn't just to protect a book, but to protect empathy and understanding in the world. It's not a magic book, I whispered. It's a book of truth. And in that moment, I understood that the true power of literature wasn't about changing the world, but about changing ourselves. Trust, I learned, is a fragile thing. A scribe named Marco, whom I had befriended, betrayed us out of fear. He was terrified of the Inquisition, and he revealed our location to them. My heart shattered. Marco, a coward in his own eyes, told me he did it for his family, that the Inquisition had threatened them with fire. I understood his fear, but I couldn't forgive his betrayal. I realized that fear was a more dangerous weapon than any sword. The library was soon under attack. Torquemada's men stormed in with torches, setting fire to the manuscripts and scrolls. We tried to put out the fire, but it was useless. The books we had protected for so long burned in the flames. The monks fled, some hiding, others captured. The Mother Superior Hildegard, her voice firm and steady, told them that ideas could not be burned. That words, if kept in their hearts, would live forever. The attack was brutal, a terrifying symbol of the struggle between fanaticism and knowledge. With the library engulfed in flames, Anselm, Hildegard, and I were forced to flee once more, taking only the Phoenix Codex with us. Our escape was desperate. We ran through the tunnels trying to outrun the fire. I felt the bitter sting of betrayal and the heavy burden of responsibility. Torquemada, upon finding a page of the Codex I had accidentally dropped, realized he was close. The chase became more personal, a vengeful hunt. "You will not escape, boy," he growled. "The Phoenix will burn in the end." I knew then that my victory was temporary. The loss, the betrayal, the pain, they were all part of the journey. But so was hope. The hope that, in the end, the pen would be mightier than the sword. And that the magic of literature would, once again, lead us to a safe place. We fled to the castle of an eccentric nobleman, Count Aurelian, a great patron of the arts and literature. The Count was an old friend of Mother Superior Hildegard, and his castle was a sanctuary for artists and intellectuals, filled with books and works of art. I was in awe. The Count welcomed us warmly, but his eyes were cold and calculating. He was fascinated by the Phoenix Codex, and he asked me to show him its pages. I felt a sense of unease. He studied the Codex with an insatiable curiosity, but his gaze was not that of a scholar, it was that of a collector. I wondered how long his protection would last. He invited us to a grand banquet, filled with artists and intellectuals who debated philosophy and art. I felt out of place, a simple copyist among great minds. The Count then invited me to his private library, a place filled with books that looked like copies of those from the Heretic's Library. I realized he wasn't just a patron, he was a collector. His love for books wasn't for the knowledge they contained, but for their rarity. He offered me a large sum of money for the Codex. My heart sank. I refused, of course. "Books, boy," he said, his voice low, "are treasures. And the Codex you have is worth more than any castle." He offered gold for the truth, but the truth cannot be bought. Anselm and Hildegard warned me not to trust him. The Count was a man of secrets. He asked me probing questions about the Abbey, the Inquisition, and the Mirror of Souls. His curiosity was insatiable, but his intentions were unclear. Despite the castle's comfort and luxury, I felt more in danger than ever. I knew the Count could turn us over to Torquemada at any moment, if the price was right. Our suspicions were confirmed when a messenger arrived. It was Torquemada, demanding that the Count surrender the heretics hiding in his castle. The Count laughed, telling him that artists and books were sacred. But Torquemada smiled a cold smile and said he would return with an army. The Count, now visibly worried, realized he had underestimated the Inquisitor. The castle, which had seemed like a refuge, had become a fortress under siege. With the siege imminent, our time was running out. With the help of Count Aurelian, we tried to decipher the last riddle of the Codex. The Count revealed that the Mirror of Souls was not an object, but a book written with magical ink, a book that could only be read by those with a pure heart. Hildegard and Anselm urged me to try. They said only I, the guardian of the Codex, could read the mirror. I felt the weight of their expectations. I feared my heart had been corrupted by my fear of the Inquisition, by the pain of betrayal. I feared I wasn't worthy. I tried to read the Mirror of Souls, but the book remained blank. The Count revealed his secret. The book fed on honesty. If you lied, it would show you a lie. If you were afraid, it would show you your fear. I realized my own fears and pain were what was holding me back. I had to face my inner demons. Hildegard prayed for the truth to triumph, and Anselm, with a look of profound wisdom, told me that true power wasn't in magic, but in faith in oneself. Do not read the book, my boy, he said. Read your heart. As Torquemada's men prepared to storm the castle, I knew I had to act. The fight was not just for the Codex but for the lives of the people who had helped me. That, I realized, was the only truth I needed. In an act of faith, I looked into the Mirror of Souls. I closed my eyes and remembered the Abbey, Hildegard's wisdom, Anselm's friendship. I remembered the pain of betrayal, the sorrow of persecution. And I forgave myself. I forgave myself for my fears, for my insecurities. When I opened my eyes, the mirror shone brightly. The truth was revealed. The magic of literature wasn't in the book, it was in my faith. The Mirror of Souls, instead of showing me the truth of the world, showed me the truth of my own heart. I was ready for the battle, not with a sword, but with a pen. The Inquisition stormed the castle, but Count Aurelian had prepared an ingenious defense. Using traps based on the medieval war texts he had read, we repelled the siege. Arrows rained down on the attackers and catapults launched stones. The Count, a man of art, revealed himself as a military strategist, shouting orders, defending his home with the same passion he defended his books. The battle was brutal, and Hildegard, with her steady voice, gave her men the strength they needed to keep fighting. Then, a new revelation from the Codex. I realized that its illustrations, when viewed in the right light, were a map of the castle, revealing secret passages that allowed us to surprise our attackers. Anselm and I, using the map, found a hidden room that led us outside the walls. From there, we were able to attack Torquemada's men from the rear. The Codex once again proved itself to be a weapon, a tool of survival, proof that knowledge in the end triumphs over force. The fighting moved to the library. Torquemada, with a cold smile, tried to burn the books. The Count, with his sword, stood in his way, telling him that books were sacred. But Torquemada, in his fanaticism, didn't listen. Hildegard, for her part, prayed for the truth to triumph. Anselm and I, having returned, fought to protect the books. The battle was a terrifying representation of the struggle between knowledge and ignorance. In the climax of the siege, I had an epiphany. The Phoenix Codex was not just a map or a compendium of legends. It was a reflection of the Mirror of Souls. When I faced the truth, my eyes changed. I could now read the Mirror of Souls. Torquemada, seeing this magic, was startled and momentarily retreated, feeling his own doubts exposed. I told him that the truth could not be burned, that ideas like words were eternal, and that magic in the end triumphs over force. In a moment of clarity, I realized the Phoenix Codex was a reflection of the Mirror of Souls itself. I held the Codex in my hands and looked into an ancient mirror. The book glowed with a golden light. The words pulsed and the illustrations came to life. The stories of knights and dragons and ladies merged with my own. The magic of literature wasn't just about fiction, it was about reality. The stories, I realized, were a reflection of ourselves, and the magic our imagination. Torquemada returned, but this time with a look of terror. I told him I saw him, that I saw his pain, his fear, his suffering. that I saw the tragedy of his past. The Mirror of Souls had not defeated him with force but with truth. When he saw his own reflection in my eyes, he broke. His fanaticism, his hatred, his desire for revenge, all melted away. The Mirror of Souls had fulfilled its mission. It had not defeated a monster, it had saved a man. Torquemada, defeated by his own shadows, retreated. His men, seeing their leader broken, dispersed. The Inquisition, which had seemed like an unstoppable force, vanished. The castle, though damaged, was saved. I held the Codex and the mirror in my hands, feeling stronger than ever. The victory was not mine, it was literature's. It was the magic of words that had the power to transform the world. The celebration that followed was not just for our survival, but for the triumph of knowledge, truth, and the enduring power of stories. Our victory was short-lived. The Mother Superior Hildegard discovered that Torquemada, before fleeing, had stolen an ancient manuscript from the castle, the Book of Shadows, a text containing the secrets to corrupting knowledge. It wasn't just a book of heresy, it was a tool for manipulating the truth. My heart sank. I knew my victory was temporary. Torquemada, though defeated, was still a threat, and now he had a new weapon. I knew he would use it for revenge. Hildegard told us we had to go after him, not just to reclaim the book but to stop him from using its power. We decided to pursue him, and our search led us to the mountains, to a ruined monastery where the Inquisitor was rumored to be hiding. An ancient map, woven into a tapestry in the Count's hall, revealed the monastery's location. The Count, with a faint smile, said that art, in the end, always reveals the truth. We began our dangerous journey. The path was rocky and difficult. The Mother Superior, despite her age, walked with surprising strength. Anselm, with his wisdom, guided the way. I, with the Codex in my hands, felt a renewed sense of purpose. My journey had become a pilgrimage for truth. As we approached the monastery, I felt a strange energy in the air, a dark, corrupt energy. I realized Torquemada was using the Book of Shadows to try and corrupt the Mirror of Souls. The final confrontation was not going to be a battle. It was going to be a duel between truth and lies, and the pen once again would be the only weapon. We arrived at the ruined monastery, a dark silhouette against the stormy mountain sky. The air was thick with a strange, corrupting energy. I realized Torquemada was using the Book of Shadows to try and corrupt the Mirror of Souls. I felt a surge of fear, but Anselm and Hildegard stood firm. They told me that the power wasn't in the book but in my heart. The truth in the end would always overcome lies. I faced a difficult choice. Should I use my own power to fight Torquemada, risking my own corruption, or should I trust in the truth of the mirror? I refused to use his dark magic. I faced him with the truth, reciting verses from the poems I had copied: Dante, Homer, Virgil. The verses, in the end, were the only weapon I needed. My knowledge of epic poems led me to a secret passage. A verse from Virgil told me that the path to light was found in darkness. I found a tunnel in the basement, which led us to the top of the monastery, where Torquemada was sitting, the Book of Shadows in his hands. I realized that the Inquisitor wasn't corrupting the mirror, he was trying to heal it. The book, which I had believed to be an instrument of evil, was a work of pain. And Torquemada, a man who, in the end, only sought redemption. He saw that I understood him. He told me that the Mirror of Souls, in reflecting the truth, also reflected pain. And that he, who was once its guardian, had been corrupted by that pain. The Book of Shadows, he confessed, was a work that helped souls to heal, but in his blindness he had used it for revenge. I realized the true enemy wasn't the book, it was the man. And the only way to save him was with the truth. Torquemada was exiled, stripped of his power, but not killed. With the help of Anselm and Hildegard, I decided that the best revenge was redemption. I gave him a pen and paper, urging him to write his own story and face his demons. I told him that the only way to heal his pain was with the truth, and that the truth, in the end, was the only thing that had the power to set him free. With tears in his eyes, Torquemada took the pen. And for the first time in a long time he felt a flicker of hope. Anselm, Hildegard, and I, with the Mirror of Souls and the Phoenix Codex, returned to Count Aurelian's castle. The Count, moved by our story, joined our cause. Together we founded a new order, a secret society dedicated to preserving literature and knowledge, far from the prying eyes of the Church and the state. The Order of the Phoenix became a refuge for scribes, storytellers, and poets. A place where the truth was sacred. I began writing a new codex, a chronicle of our journey, a work of art that became a legacy. I realized my mission was not to protect a book, but to protect the truth it contained. The Order of the Phoenix spread throughout Europe. Storytellers traveled from place to place, transmitting our stories. And I, the guardian of the truth, became the narrator of a new world, a world where literature, in the end, had the power to save us. The final confrontation was a battle of words. I used the magic of literature, quoting poets and philosophers, to expose Torquemada's lies. I told him that knowledge wasn't a poison, but a medicine. That love was stronger than hatred. Torquemada, in turn, used the secrets of the Book of Shadows to twist words and create illusions. The battle was a visual representation of the struggle between truth and lies. Hildegard's voice, firm and serene, became a melody of light that dispelled Torquemada's illusions. She told him that faith was found not in fanaticism but in compassion. The mirror of souls shone brightly, reflecting the truth of Torquemada's heart, a heart full of pain and fear. The mirror showed him his family crying out for his redemption. Torquemada collapsed, defeated by his own shadows. The Book of Shadows crumbled into dust. The Inquisitor, once the most powerful man in the Inquisition, became a simple man, stripped of his power, his hatred, his thirst for revenge. The storm calmed. The sun's light illuminated the ruined monastery. I held the codex and the mirror in my hands, feeling stronger than ever. The victory was not mine, it was literature's. It was the magic of words that had the power to transform the world. And in that victory, love, in the end, had triumphed over hatred. Years passed. The Mother Superior Hildegard, now an old woman, had become a legend. The young scribes of the order would visit her on her deathbed. She told them that wisdom wasn't in books but in the heart. That faith in the end wasn't for the church but for the truth. I held her hand as she gave me her last lesson. She said that knowledge was a gift to be shared. The guardian Alaric, she whispered, is not you. It is the truth itself. I, now a wise old man, led the Order of the Phoenix. We had created a network of living libraries, where stories were memorized and passed down through generations, ensuring they would never be forgotten. The Phoenix Codex and the Mirror of Souls had become symbols of our mission. One day I met my first disciple, a young boy who had found an ancient parchment in a box. It was a fragment of an old manuscript, with an illustration of a bird. I smiled, telling him that the story in the end repeats itself. Anselm, now an old man himself, taught the young scribes the art of calligraphy. He told them that the pen was not just a tool, it was an extension of the soul. He told me he had found peace, the peace of knowing that the truth had been saved. I sat at my desk, a pen in my hand. I realized my mission was not over. It was to continue writing, to continue protecting the magic of literature. The cycle had come to an end, and now, it was my turn to begin anew. The Mother Superior Hildegard, in her final moments, gave me the last piece of the puzzle. A poem that explained that the Mirror of Souls and the Phoenix Codex were not magic books, but literature itself. The magic wasn't in the parchment, it was in the mind of the reader. Stories, when read, become a part of us, they transform us and give us power. I finally understood. The magic of medieval literature was the magic of the human mind, of imagination and knowledge. Hildegard, with a gentle smile, closed her eyes. I thanked her, my heart full. I recited the poem with tears in my eyes. The codex and the mirror faded into light, revealing that they were just symbols. Symbols of imagination, truth, and faith. I realized that the magic of literature wasn't in objects, but in the mind. And the true treasure wasn't the codex, but the knowledge it contained. I taught my disciple that magic wasn't a trick, it was an art. The Order's mission wasn't to protect books, but to protect imagination. I sat at my desk, a pen in my hand. My mission wasn't over. It was to continue writing, to continue protecting the magic of literature. The Codex, in the end, was the only thing that had the power to protect the truth. The magic of medieval literature wasn't a tale, it was a truth. And that truth, in the end, lived in us all. It was the end of a story and the beginning of a new one,